Okay. Well, people are still creeping on, but I think it's only fair to the people who are right on time to get going. Um, and yeah, well, it's pretty short for a computer science meeting, but what the heck. First of all, I really like to thank everybody for coming. I know that this is the end of a very challenging first week back to classes. I know it's been a challenging couple of weeks, especially for staff and faculty, um, and trying to prepare to launch us all remote, and then get us through this. And I am really, really grateful that you would make the time. I am even more amazed and humbled and grateful for the resilience and flexibility of this community. Um, it's strange to be coming together from our home offices and home classrooms and all of this, to make this new world order emerge. And it's been a lot of work. And I just feel so fortunate to be part of this college and to have all of you to rely on, and to depend on, from the students who have really very quickly gotten their heads around this remote learning thing that they're trying to do, to the faculty who have, I know, spent most of last week trying to figure out what on earth to do with their classes to get them online in a way that they hope will be really accessible, and to the wonderful, wonderful staff who have supported us throughout all of this and who have, in their own ways, made a host of different arrangements while also learning to deal with the challenges of working remotely. I also feel very grateful that we work in a field where we can continue our work from home, with fairly relatively little impact when we can see what's going on to others out there, and where we can also have a huge impact on the public health, not only by enabling this kind of work from home, but also by providing technologies that keep us all connected, that are helping to model pandemics and do other sorts of work, as I'll mention in a bit, that will um, that will help make the world a healthier place. So I think we should all, feel a little bit of pride and a lot of gratitude, that we do work in this wonderful field. Um, that said, this last week or two has been a giant experiment. Today is another experiment. Had no idea who would show up for this meeting, and how this is a new version of the Zoom technology for me. It's got a different broadcast function that I haven't been using. So this is all an experiment, as is the whole educational program in a remote setting. It's an experiment on a really large scale. So we're still all figuring this out, and I really appreciate everybody's patience and forbearance. And I know that there are probably, despite all your patience and forbearance, lots and lots of questions that you might have. So we're going to start out here by answering some of the questions that came in from students, faculty, and staff in advance. And if you have additional questions, one of the things you can do is click the Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and that should let you type them in. And then once we get through the ones that were written in ahead of time, we'll be taking questions from that pool and answering them. Now, when I say we, I should have started by also thanking Jack, Dean Jack Wilden, came knowing that the students in particular might have a lot of questions that would be more his bailiwick to answer. And so he'll be helping me out with this. Okay, so we probably won't get to every question, at least if you have questions, but if we don't get to them all, We are keeping a record of the questions asked, and we'll try to respond individually or in writing on our website after this. We are also recording this session, and we'll be posting it to YouTube and sending out a link as soon as possible. So maybe some of you in the future are already watching this in its recorded form. Okay, so let's get going. It's my great pleasure to introduce Jack Wilden, our Associate Dean of Student Affairs at CICS, who's going to field a set of questions that came in advance about changes to academic programs and undergraduate admissions. Jack.
Thank you, Laura. So, welcome everybody. We hope we'll answer as many of your questions as we possibly can. I'm sure there are quite a few. There have been a bunch of changes, most notably the recently announced change to the policy about pass-fail grading and satisfactory, unsatisfactory grading. So we have a few questions that came in about that ahead of time. I'll do my best to answer them, and if there are more, I'll do my best to answer those. So the first one that we got is, do you anticipate any changes with the updated satisfactory, unsatisfactory for PhD students B+ grade requirement? In other words, does the B+ as a minimum grade for all classes still stand? All right, and so the answer to that is no, that does not still stand, at least and so far only for the spring 2020 semester. The university is mandating that for all courses taken this semester, satisfactory grades will satisfy all program requirements, and so that supersedes the CICS policy about the requirement for B+ in graduate classes. All right, so in all those course requirements where a letter grade above a given threshold is normally required, that's no longer the case. So that means for graduate students, a SAT or a satisfactory grade will meet the minimum requirement for the PhD this semester. All right, that is the way that that policy is being imposed and mandated. I would point out, I'm not the graduate program director. I'm not really the expert on the graduate program, but I know that that answer at least is correct. All right, so that's one question. Another question is from an undergraduate saying, I'm a graduating senior and I'm taking my last major requirement this semester, which is a 400 level computer science course. With the new pass-fail rules, am I able to pass-fail this course and still get full credit and graduate? And the answer is yes. That's what the new policy says. However, it's worth pointing out that just switching to pass-fail doesn't mean you're done. You still have to pass the course. The difference is now we will accept all grades which qualify for pass, which is everything other than an F, and all of those will fulfill requirements. As it turns out, that would have been true in this student's case anyway. All you really needed to do was pass that course, unless you got a grade that was so low that it pulled your grade point average in the major, or of course your overall grade point average, below 2. Now that can't happen if you take the course pass-fail. Pass-fail courses have no impact on your GPA. So the short answer is yes, the long answer is yes. All right? Next question. How will the pass-fail option be evaluated at the end of the semester when grades are posted? Will a P be substituted for the B and/or C requirement in the CS contract? So this question is really about students who are not currently in the major, who have submitted and had approved a contract for this semester for entry into the major, or indeed it could be a 2-semester contract that goes into the fall. How will the courses and the grades from this semester be applied to that contract? Because typically our contracts require particular grades, a B or higher, for example, in particular courses in order to be admitted to the major. Under the new policy, earning a P in a course that's required for an applicant on contract in this semester will satisfy the requirement, whatever the requirement previously said. Now, it's worth pointing out that whether or not that P demonstrates sufficient mastery of the material to prepare the student for subsequent courses is a separate matter and a different question. The P will fulfill the requirement for getting into the major, But advisors are working on how we're going to deal with situations where there's concern that the actual grade a student received, hidden behind the P, doesn't suggest that they have the mastery needed to go on. You'll hear more about that in the future. Those details are still being worked out. All right, another question. Can we go under the university's requirement of minimum 12 graded credits when changing a course to pass-fail? Right, so the university has a standard requirement that you need to take at least 12 graded courses in a semester to be considered full-time. And it's worth noting that the standard contracts for applicants on contract require a minimum of 12 graded credits in a semester that's being considered for the contract for getting into the major. All of those requirements are suspended for the spring 2020 semester. So taking fewer than 12 graded credits overall won't put you in any kind of jeopardy, and taking fewer than 12 graded credits when we're considering the issue of applicants on contract also won't be a negative. So the short answer again is yes. Another question, are we now, as we are now allowed to change major required courses to pass-fail, will a P in such a course count as C or better prerequisite for future CS courses in coming semesters? Once again, the answer is yes. For this semester only, at least so far, under the current policy for this semester, a P in any such course fulfills the C or better prerequisite for future courses. Once again, the issue of whether or not the actual grade that's hidden behind that P indicates sufficient mastery to succeed in those future courses is an advising question, and one that we will be working with the advising staff to figure out ways to help students address, because our overall concern is to make sure students can be successful. And we don't want students to put themselves in a situation where they might have trouble, they might struggle, because they assume that the P means, all right, I fulfilled the prerequisite, I'm ready to take the next course. We will be working proactively with students to avoid those kinds of situations, but again, the short answer is yes, a P fulfills a prerequisite, whatever the previously stated grade for that prerequisite was. And finally, of the questions that sort of fall into my area of knowledge, in this case, not knowledge, but that we received ahead of time, there was a question that said, during the last recession, many top undergraduate applicants chose UMass over other top privates because of the university's value during an unstable time. Are there any indicators that the timing of this pandemic is affecting yield? So this is really a question about admissions and about incoming students for hopefully the fall semester, and how the changes in the universe's situation, circumstances out there might affect how many students choose or choose not to come to UMass Amherst among their choices of places that they might enroll. And the answer is, admissions may or may not have seen any impacts up to this point. It's very early days, and if you remember if you are an undergraduate student, you may remember that you don't have to make a decision in past years anyway until May 1st. Whether those dates will change, I haven't heard yet. But in any case, lots of students don't decide until very near the end. So whether or not admissions has seen effects, I don't actually know. If they have, they haven't shared them with the colleges or departments, and we shall just have to see. So those are the questions we received ahead of time that sort of fell within my area of knowledge. There's a grad question in there, there's an admissions question in there about which I'm not really an expert, but those are the best answers we can give to this point. So I'm going to return the microphone to Laura and let her go forward, and she has a couple more questions to address. Then we will start looking at the questions that you all are submitting. Thanks, and we'll talk to you in a bit.
Thank you so much, Jack. Really appreciate that. We've had a couple more questions come in on the question feed, but we'll let you have a break for a second. Just a reminder to people, if you haven't found the Q&A button and you do have a question that you don't hear addressed, are being addressed, please do just click on Q&A and feel free to tee those up, and we'll try our best to answer some of them. But I did have a couple of questions from people who wrote in advance that I would like to address because I think they'll be of interest to folks. The first one was, what advice do you have for students whose internships are canceled? We have heard a couple of reports of students who had that happen to them. We have been hearing reports that companies, in some cases, even the large tech companies, are canceling internship programs for the summer. I've heard reports that others of them are taking those internship programs remote. American ingenuity. There we go. We'll see what happens. Usually the reason they would cancel would be a safety issue where companies don't want to put their interns or their permanent employees at risk. Many of these companies have their employees working at home right now. And for some of them, especially the smaller companies, it's an economic issue. With all this uncertainty out there in the world, companies are understandably being cautious about their bottom lines. So there's a couple of things to say here. First of all, the first couple of cancellations I heard about, the students did get other job offers. So it's not a pervasive problem yet. Secondly, if an internship does get canceled, I think many students will worry about how that might impact them financially or how it would affect their future careers. And for international students, I know you could be concerned about cancellations affecting your visas. So for all the students who might be in this situation, I really strongly urge you to contact CICS Careers. They are working very hard to find people alternatives. They know about other projects that are looking for help and for talent, so that even if you can't get a paid internship, maybe you can at least have an activity or project that you work on over the summer that will help you build your skills for potential to demonstrate to potential employers. So please, for all of you, CICS Careers is really there to help. I want to really thank the staff and the peer advisors there for stepping up to the plate and continuing to really provide support for all of our students. And for the international students, unfortunately, I can't help personally with your visa status, but I really recommend getting in touch with the International Programs Office. There have been some changes due to all of this that's going on in terms of how requirements are being considered and so on. And the IPO is trying their very best to help you guys make it through, stay students in good standing, and so on. All right, here's a big one. To all you seniors and masters or PhDs who might be graduating out there, with the commencement activities postponed, how will CICS be celebrating the class of 2020? Good question. We will celebrate you. We absolutely are incredibly proud of you, and we're figuring out what we can do. So I have been thinking about you a lot. Spring this is a really important time, and it always makes me think of all the joy that we experience together at graduation. So I'm going to miss seeing all of you in person in May. First of all, for the undergraduates, I really I hope that the university, in fact, will come up with a new date or a postponement or some kind of a way to celebrate with an official 2020 undergraduate commencement. They are certainly looking into all those alternatives now. Here in CICS, we usually have a wonderful senior celebration for you. And what we're working on now is we have a little committee trying to figure out what could we do virtually. What would be meaningful, what would leave you with some lasting memories, and so on. So expect to hear more. We're hoping that we'll be able to announce plans for that in the next couple of weeks. And of course, if you have ideas and suggestions, please do get them to us. You could write to maybe Randy Barrios or to Carrie Shaw, and a host of the other staff will also be helping with this, but we would be very interested in your suggestions. And for the graduate students, I have not heard for certain whether what the plans are for the graduate school graduation festivities from the university overall. I know they're also looking into what can be done. But again, we are thinking about virtual activities, or perhaps a postponement of our annual MS-PhD lunch, looking at alternatives that will allow as many of you as possible to participate and to feel our, get our good wishes as we send you forth into the world. So that's what's going on there. I'm sorry I don't have a firm, here's what we're doing, but as you can all imagine, we're trying to cope with a whole lot of things at once here. So a lot still up in the air. Here's a general interest question, perhaps. I mentioned earlier that I feel very happy to be and fortunate to be part of computer science, where we're well positioned to help with public health issues. And so this question goes to, how are we positioned and how are we helping with the COVID-19 situation, both in the short and long term? So as you may have read in some of the papers and news articles that are coming out, computer scientists across the country, across the world really, in academia and industry are contributing to COVID-19 research that's helping to predict the spread of the coronavirus, map its genetic evolution, speed up diagnosis and the development of potential treatments, while also helping policymakers make decisions around issues like transportation and supply chain. We do relevant research across UMass in pretty much all those areas. In CICS, our faculty and students are already helping. For example, in our newsletter this week, we're highlighting CICS Assistant Professor Tawador Rahman and his doctoral student Farsad Al-Hussein, who've invented FluSense, which is a machine learning powered device that can detect coughing and crowd size in real time. The new tool can help forecast seasonal flu, that's what it was intended for, but also other viral respiratory outbreaks such as the COVID-19 pandemic or SARS. So we're very excited about that and what can be done with that. One of our informatics students, Andrew Romesco, has been accepted to compete in the Johns Hopkins Design Challenge for combating COVID-19. We have a range of other things going on across the university where people are, where often our faculty or students are helping to build the tools that people need in this space. Okay, so now I've gotten a couple of questions, both online and one that came in advance about what's the plan for next fall? Is there a chance that we'll still be working remotely? Is there a chance that we'll still be delivering classes remotely? And I guess, you know, you all can read the news and you can all go out there and look at websites that will show you the curve of the trajectory of this disease. I don't think anybody right now is sure what's going to happen in the fall. So of course we are still looking at contingencies. We're all thinking about how we would handle a whole host of things. One of the high points on my mind is what happens to freshmen when their first experience of campus and our community is remote? How do we make them feel better? But our first focus on all of this has to be in keeping you and us all safe and well, and trying to stop this disease. So the better we isolate ourselves right now, the more unlikely it is that we'll be remote in the fall. So I just will encourage everybody again to follow all the precautions, wash your hands, stay away from other people, stay home, all of those good things. That's our best shot right now. And believe me, as soon as I know something with any certainty, I will share that with this community. We're all gonna watch and wait, and we're all going to hope that that we flatten that curve, as they like to say, right? That the new cases will stop ticking upwards. Okay, another one for students. One student, and I'm sure he's not alone, said, "I am quite worried because I don't usually learn or do well in an online environment, and I have a tough time focusing compared to being in a physical classroom. What do we recommend for someone's learning style that is not used to online learning?" So we have a number I had a number of ideas, but we were smarter than that. We asked our wonderful directors of diversity and inclusion, Erica Dawson-Head and Emma Anderson, both of whom at one point in their lives have been, in their academic careers, have had to deal with online or remote learning. So Erica in particularly says, "I'm also someone that was afraid of learning in an online environment. I was able to pull through my online classes by making sure I kept up with assignments, asking a lot of questions, and really thoughtfully trying to complete the assignments. Communication with your instructor is your lifeline because they are there to help you. If work is optional, do it. It will provide you with the extra support you may need to feel confident in the class." And she ends, of course, in positive Erica style, "You've got this." Okay, Emma's advice. "I'd recommend making a schedule for yourself to make absolutely sure you complete assignments on time. That was always my downfall in online classes, that without physically going to class, it was easy to forget when small assignments like discussion posts and so on were due." So I think both of them make some really good points there. I would say that I would pick up on Erica's point about your instructor is your lifeline. Your instructor, your TAs, your graders, whoever it is you've been communicating with, they're there to help. And to the faculty and should still be holding office hours, and TAs and so on, make use of them. Take the time to go in. It gives you a chance to virtually go in, of course. It gives you the chance to really connect with them. I've heard a couple of reports from across campus that maybe students aren't showing up so much at office hours. I think that's a mistake. I really think that that's a chance just again to hear the material, hear about the material in a different way, to see what others are struggling with, and to keep a sense of connectivity in your classes. Okay, one more, and then I'll switch to the live stream. One of our faculty asked, "Has the university given any thought to giving access to large spaces, for example, the Mullins Center, Boyden, or Topman Gym, to Cooley Dickinson Hospital in case they need overflow space for beds?" So I don't know about that issue directly. I haven't heard that one. But I do know that our emergency response team on campus is working closely with the local agencies and governments around here around this whole general notion of the crisis. So for example, UMass University Health Services has been doing testing for folks in the local area. There have been articles that you might have seen in the local papers regarding our sending out baby Burke trucks full of food to feed local students. They're feeding about 400 local teenagers and youth a day in this crisis. So I am very sure that if beds become a need, and I know we're all sincerely hoping that it won't get that bad, I suspect the university will look into that and it will be considered. I would be surprised. we believe in being good members of the community. Okay, so we got a question in that Jack could take. Says this is another one. I think you answered it in some forms before, but maybe it doesn't hurt to answer again. Do the pass-fail courses still satisfy the major requirements?
Right. So this question may have come in before I answered it, or may have come in after I had already answered it and the person didn't hear the answer, or maybe it still isn't clear enough, or whatever. If my current answer doesn't suffice, send another question or contact me otherwise. So, do the pass-fail courses still satisfy the major requirements? If you select to do a course pass-fail instead of taking a grade for it this semester, any grade you get which is not a fail, that is, if you get a pass, will satisfy whatever the major requirement in question is. Any of our previous requirements about needing a C or better or so on are waived by university mandate for this semester. As I did say before, that's a different issue than whether or not the grade you get that's hidden behind the P indicates enough mastery to be really prepared to go on to the next course. That's an advising matter, and the advising staff and the faculty are thinking hard about how we can help students decide whether or not they feel prepared to go on to the next course, whatever the P may represent, so that they can be successful. And we'll be communicating more about that in the future. But the short answer again to the question of do passes satisfy major requirements, the answer is yes.
Right.
Right.
Great. Yeah, there's a couple more, Jack, that you might want to take up. One is again for the MS students, the similar sort of question. Can they satisfy their graduate requirements for May 2020 graduation with a SAT and a core course instead of the letter grade B? And then there's a longer question about destination days.
Right. All right. So I will be happy to do both of those. And since I'm at it, Laura, and I can see the list of questions as you can, there's one that comes before, which is a straightforward thing to answer, which is this, the question is, my CS 590G course doesn't satisfy a CS 400 plus requirement in my ARR. How to fix that? So this is really independent of the current coronavirus situation, but it's a question that comes up fairly often, and it's easy enough to answer. The way Spire's algorithms are written, they don't recognize any course that ends with a letter like CS 590G as being a course that satisfies the CS 400 plus requirement, but in pretty much every case they do, and in this particular case that course does. Getting the ARR fixed is a matter for someone on the staff to do, and they will get around to it when we're a little less busy. So you don't really need to do anything. If it continues to concern you, you can send us email and we'll put it in the queue of things to do, but it will satisfy the requirement, even though the ARR, the Academic Requirements Report, doesn't always reflect those things completely accurately. It's another computer program, and computer programs have corner cases and they don't always get it right. All right, so the question about, let's see, where are we? Does the policy apply to MS students as well? Again, I'm not the graduate program director or the master's program director, but I know the answer to this is yes, because the university's policy says that for this semester, any passing or SAT grade will fulfill any applicable requirement. And so yes, if you get a SAT in a core course, that will suffice. You don't need the usual B in order to pass, in order to complete your graduation requirements. All right. The question about destination days is really one that has to do, sorry, things are bouncing around on the Q&A thing. There is something called destination days, which is part of the university admissions office approach to helping prospective students decide whether or not they want to come to UMass. And destination days are big events that happen a couple of times in the spring, where prospective students are invited to come to campus, look around, talk to people, get information about the programs in order to help them make a decision. Obviously, a big gathering on campus these days is not possible, and so the destination day that was supposed to happen a week or two ago was canceled. There are plans underway to do something, but I haven't heard what that something is going to turn out to be yet. I'm sure admissions is anxious to do a webinar or other kind of outreach thing before the May 1st deadline to make decisions, and I will let people know as soon as I hear what they are. I haven't heard about them yet. All right, we have one here from someone who says, I'm a freshman currently on contract, and I've been worried that I might just barely meet the 3.0 GPA requirement, and having to do online classes is making this harder. Do you think I will still get accepted if I'm close enough? I can't really answer because I don't know the exact specifics of your case. If you want to get a specific answer, feel free to send me an email and I'll have a look. The general answer is, the good thing from a student's point of view about this pass-fail policy is you will get to pick and choose. You could decide to take all your courses pass-fail this semester, get all the passes. When that happens, that will pro forma not change your GPA at all. So your GPA will be exactly what it was at the end of previous semester, because passes do not affect grade point average. You can then go in and look, and if you've got a couple of A's hidden behind some of those P's, you could remove the P's, have the A's count, and that'll raise your grade point average. Conversely, if you have some low grades hidden behind the P's, you can leave the P's there, and that way those low grades won't lower your grade point average. If you need help making those decisions once the grades are in, we'll be happy to do it. You'll have some time after the end of the semester to make those decisions, and that will in the end, of course, affect your grade point average and therefore a decision about the contract. Beyond that, it's really hard to answer, because without knowing exactly what the situation is, I can't really bet whether or what your chances will be of getting accepted. If it's purely a grade point matter, then what I just said is about the best I can tell you. So I think those are the ones that are obviously fall to me. I'm going to turn it back to you, Laura. If you see more that obviously fall to me, let me know, and I will be happy to jump back.
I appreciate that partnership. Great. Thank you very much, Jack. So the next question was from Marco Manak. Hi, Marco. He's worried about finding funding for our big data initiatives, which I greatly appreciate him worrying about. And he's especially worried about those that involve multidisciplinary collaborations, including some really cool things that we were starting to work on around the Energy Transition Initiative, efforts to combat health disinformation, work that increases the government's capacity to interact more responsibly with citizens via digital technology, and so on. Under normal circumstances, Marco brings together relevant faculty in small groups to explain the opportunities and determine if they had an interest in pursuing them. And so he's asking, how should he engage with us during this period of disruption? Would our new normal Zoom meetings be appropriate? And yes, certainly. I mean, the need to carry on the business of the university is still paramount. Education, we're trying to learn this remote teaching thing, is key, but so also is our research and in driving the state of the world forward. We compute for the common good here. We want to continue that more than ever in this crisis. So funding is essential to make those go forward, and I'm pretty sure faculty will be very willing to hop on a Zoom call. It takes, in some sense, less time than going to a physical meeting. They won't have to traverse campus and be able to discuss that. I think if you're worried about an opportunity and, you know, in general, would it be appropriate? that either I or I think he's on the line, so I'm going to speak for him. And he can yell at me afterwards. Shlomo Zilberstein, who's our Associate Dean for Research and Engagement, would be very happy to talk to you and appropriately direct your questions. Okay, on a brighter note, that's good. Yes, enough doom and gloom. What are some of the things that are working well or have given me a different perspective on learning or life? Well, I'm sure, so first of all, I want to step back and just say to that, you know, one of the things I read early on into this isolation and working from home and flattening the curve set of announcements, one of the things I read somewhere said, you know, it really helps if you remind yourself every day of the things that you're grateful for. So some things that I am grateful for, I already started with this incredible community and the incredible patience and resilience and versatility of this community. I also am really grateful to live in a beautiful area where I am, you know, surrounded by nature and can go out and walk in the middle of the day without worrying about running into too many people and breaking isolation or any of that. We've been blessed with beautiful weather out here in Amherst. Some of you may be further afield right now, but if you're in Amherst, you can look out your windows right now and see how wonderful it is and how nice that is going well. In terms of working well more closer to home, though, one of the things that has been amazing are these Zoom meetings. I have spent more hours on Zoom than probably any of you, I'm going to venture a guess, in the last week. I was in 2 full-day workshops. I was in a writing session for a workshop this morning. I have been in endless meetings. My boss is holding office hours by Zoom, and I cannot believe how many different Zoom IDs and meetings I have. It's a little overwhelming. I strongly recommend a careful calendar of which link you're supposed to be on when. That helps me dramatically. But Zoom, bless its heart, knock wood, everybody keep their fingers crossed, is functioning beautifully. The university sent around some statistics, which I'm happy to share, but it shows something like 45,000 logins a day from UMass only. So from our campus, our students and faculty, UMass accounts, 45,000 separate sessions a day that have been on average this week. And you know, that is really an impressive number. It's impressive because it means many, if not most, of our students are showing up to their classes. Thank you very much, students. It says that meetings are going smoothly and meetings are going well. The other thing that I've really been enjoying, strange though it may sound, is I don't get a lot of chance to go play with new technology. And so I learned all about Slack this week. And I now have all these Slack buddies and conversations and so on in case I feel lonely or bored. But I do recommend Slack if you can be disciplined about it as a tool to keep in touch with your friends and colleagues. So those are a few from me. I'm sure others have more. Mostly, I just like to be able to. I have to tell you, I have a very positive attitude. I always do, but I am proud of this community. I'm very sure that we're going to come through okay. The next question, hi Chinmay, is can we establish some robust evaluation metrics to see how well online learning works? How can it be complementary when we do get back to the on-site learning to our traditional in-person classes? And could that be used perhaps to tackle the problem of lack of rooms? So this is a great question. In fact, you're not the first to start thinking about this. We were already, prior to this crisis, thinking about that, in part as we were exploring what are the opportunities for education going to be out on Mount Ida campus. It occurred to some people that, oh, well, if we have, to the extent we have students there, we can offload physical classrooms here. And so that was one answer, but then we quickly broadened that to understand that, hey, we can also just help by having these online sessions that would go, that could go with it. So we are actually looking at that. And I think your question about evaluation metrics is very pertinent. We are in the middle of the single biggest natural experiment. That is an experiment that nobody designed, it just happened to us. We had a bunch of students. They've been evaluated on particular metrics for years. We know kind of how we evaluate. You can argue about how good our evaluation systems are, but we know how we evaluate classes and student learning in normal times. Most of those same measures, not all of them, but most of them will still be applicable in this new world order. And the comparison of those statistics for what happens this semester, how effective are these classes, how much do our students learn, what do you feel about the experiences, and so on, to last semester, for example, or any other spring semester, should tell us a lot about what some of the drawbacks and some of the strengths are, because there are some strengths to online learning. And in that vein, I'll take a second to quote my husband, who used to, he's been teaching some remotely sort of for years, because when he taught at Stanford in a previous lifetime, his classes were always broadcast to people around the world. In fact, Stanford did a lot of distance learning. And he always got comments back from the students saying, I really love the fact that your lectures are online. And this included the students who were actually at Stanford and taking the class. They said, you know, we can speed you up, we can slow you down, we can listen to you twice if we want to. There are some real positives to being online and recording everything, as well as the disadvantages that we all are worrying about there. Okay, and then the last question that has come in, unless some others come, we'll be pretty much out of questions, pretty much on time. The last one that came in is asking really for an email to the undergrads to confirm some of the answers that Jack just gave. Some of this is already out there online. I direct you to the UMass website for their emergency response website. We also have a number of Q&As up on our own emergency response website. But if it will be helpful to send an email about this, provide it in yet another form, we can certainly arrange that.
Right. Let me just jump in, if I may, Laura, to say that there are a couple of things on our UMass CICS web pages that specifically address the questions about how pass-fail works, both for courses in general and for students on contract. They may or may not have been announced by email. I honestly don't know, but I will make sure that the advising staff, or me and Laura, if you prefer to have our names at the bottom, send these things out and do our very best to widely publicize. We, of course, encourage word of mouth. We encourage telling other people. And I promise you that everything I've told you today is true. So although we will be happy to write it down, if I said it, I meant it. Laura, you're muted.
Glad you could tell. I was just saying at this time we're out of the official question list. So unless people have other questions, I'm always, as you know, happy to ramble on and to talk to you folks. But, you know, uh, in the absence of that, I guess I would just, I would just sort of end by summarizing a little bit where I began. First of all, we're doing well. By all counts, by all indicators, it seems like the technology is working. It seems like classrooms are going on. I have not had faculty in tears in my office, which is really nice. They're stressed out, but not too stressed out. I haven't had staff in tears in my office. Thank you, staff. Virtual office. But I know that you also have been carrying quite a heavy load, especially for the emotional support that you provide to our students and to each other. I am just enormously grateful to be part of this community. I know it's hard to be in times where the future's uncertain. I would just, you know, tell you, we will survive. We will get through this, and we will be a stronger and closer community at the end of it. If you have other questions that didn't get addressed, if you felt this was too big a forum or too impersonal, we weren't sure how many people would show up. We were a little afraid we'd get 600 and hence the tighter controls than usual. But, you know, I am here and I read my emails and I look at comments, and I'm very interested in ways that we can do a better job of staying together as a community, continuing to communicate with each other and helping you all as you adjust to this new world that we're living in.
And I would echo that, the same for me with respect in particular to undergraduate, but also graduate and any other kinds of student issues. Laura's very good at forwarding me things that she'd rather I answered than she did, and I will do the same in reverse, but feel free to send me email or contact me however you wish so that I can answer questions. And good luck to everybody. Take care.
Yeah, wash your hands, stay at home. And I don't know if we have a way to open this up more, but if people would like to schedule time to chat with any subset of us, just let us know.